Hello again, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, hazardous weather graphic. Here we've got a couple areas highlighted in yellow, signifying, in the case of the greater Anchorage area, here that's a winter weather advisory, and that's out until 1 a.m. Sunday morning, and that's for possibly as much as 2 to 4 or maybe 5 inches additional snowfall accumulation around the area there, Eagle River, Anchorage, Indian, Eklutna, those areas in the advisory area there until about 1 a.m. And also up here in the Kobuk Valley there in the Ambler area, the greater Ambler area there, wind advisory continues until, well, for this evening, as winds will continue to gust as high as 45 miles an hour, especially over the higher elevations like Indian Mountain, for example, seeing 45 mile an hour wind gusts today. And then that's going to slowly diminish this evening, and the wind advisory will end. Wind's already coming down here across the western interior. Still pretty gusty, gust 30, 35 there, St. Lawrence Island, Gamble. And coming down this afternoon, but still pretty brisk out of the northeast here for the Seward Peninsula, Nome, and Golovin, 30 to 35 mile an hour wind gusts, down from the 40 to 50 mile an hour wind gusts that were noted earlier. And moving on to satellite imagery, you can see low pressure or a lot of clouds rolling into the southeast coast throughout the day today, associated with a storm system here and the frontal boundary right through there. That bringing a fair amount of rain, moderate rainfall during from 3 a.m. to 3 p.m. this afternoon. About 1.5 inches fell at Ketchikan, up to 3/4 of an inch reported at Metlakatla, with a 1/2 inch reported at Petersburg and Juneau. So the heaviest amounts down to the south, but still good soaking rains even farther up to the north. In fact, Haines had 2/3 of an inch of precipitation as well today, all in the form of rain. The temperatures in the lower to mid-40s this afternoon. Otherwise, here's the area of clouds that brought the snow into the Cook Inlet Anchorage area. Kind of mixture of rain or snow earlier today down at Homer. They put about 0.2 of an inch water equivalent, and close to about 0.3 of an inch water equivalent in the Anchorage area, and that translates to 3 inches of snow. And lighter amounts back here to the west, really lighter amounts, just really not much significant measurable. That extends up into the eastern interior as well, pretty light amounts, really not that significant. And then the northeast winds here blowing clear skies out to St. Lawrence Island, even had some clearing around the Pribilofs. Isolated showers here with this area of clouds there for the Pribilof Islands. On down to the Alaska Peninsula and the Fox Islands. Again, amounts really light, not significant at all. And then the areas of clearing into the interior here. And basically dry north slope in the Arctic coast today, or it was. Wainwright had a few light snow showers earlier on, and then over toward Kaktovik, maybe some flurries there. Out over the Bering Sea, kind of a weakening system pushing in toward the Aleutians here, and that front weakening as with every passing hour here over the western Aleutians due to a stronger system farther to the south that's taking over and kind of sapping the energy out of this one. So on the chart, kind of a weak warm front here, bringing some rain into the western Aleutians, possibly as far east as Adak, although staying mostly to the west there towards Shimia and Attu, with the low center about 989 millibars here, but the gradient not all that tight around it, so winds aren't really significant. Strongest winds are up here through the interior areas. You can see the tighter gradient here producing some gusty winds, especially the higher elevations. I mentioned Indian Mountain gust about 45. Wind advisory continues this evening. We'll actually end this evening for the Kobuk Valley. And then the Arctic front here, right along northern Cook Inlet in the Anchorage area, you can see, again, the winter weather advisory continuing with additional snowfall here through until 1 a.m., as I mentioned, could be anywhere 3 to 6 inches. Highest, of course, will be over toward the hills and the mountains, and then lighter amounts away from the hills and mountains. Otherwise, showers will continue to diminish here over the Kenai Peninsula itself, with some clearing you can see showing up today. But Seward at about 2/10 of an inch of precipitation, really lightening up here along the North Gulf Coast this afternoon. And you can see the blue there, that's clear skies. It extends down into the western quadrant of this low off the southeast coast. And there's a front pushing eastward there, and the moderate amounts of rain with it up to the north, all the way to the northern panhandle there. And for tonight, we'll see that low center tracks northward. So rain will continue, it'll stay wet, a little bit breezy, maybe over the southern panhandle. Winds won't be any really significant, won't be significant at all, and maybe gusts 30 miles an hour tops, and that's about it. And rainfall rates will begin to diminish and become a little more showery toward morning here as this next trough finally pushes eastward, the main front already well off to the east. Weak low here develops over Prince William Sound, but westerly flow here, actually pulling some dry air into the Gulf of Alaska with probably just a complete let-up in the shower activity. Chance of showers, Kodiak Island, mixed rain and snow showers, Alaska Peninsula, Aleutian Range area up into Bristol Bay. Areas of light snow and snow showers here on the northeast wind flow here on the north side of the low and trough axis through here, but amounts not expected to be that heavy, maybe another, as I said, 3 to 6 inches around Anchorage, and even lighter amounts up here. Denali Park could pick up a couple inches maybe along the Alaska Range, but in the Tanana Valley, the White Mountains, won't be much additional snowfall at all. Then clearing up here over the north central interior areas, and this trough keeping a chance of flurries along the western central Arctic coastal areas, possibly down as far south as Cape Lisburne. Otherwise, not much change from the mostly clear skies you had today at Kivalina and Point Hope into Kotzebue Sound. And Kotzebue Sound now about full of new ice, so ice continues to grow here along the west coast areas with the colder air coming down. Again, still gusting 35 miles an hour, St. Lawrence Island today. That'll diminish tonight. And pretty unsettled here with that that front I had drawn weakening into a trough with just light amounts of precipitation, winds pretty light as well, pushing into the central Aleutians. Still a risk of some showers over the Alaska Peninsula. And then right on the edge of the chart there, you can just see it barely getting on by late tonight here. The next storm that tomorrow will push northward, kind of a pretty snappy, tight package here with possible storm force winds in a narrow band out in front of in advance of the, right along or in advance of the front, but more likely just gales with that coming up, especially for the areas from about Atka, trying to get into the eastern Aleutians. Otherwise, the Pribilofs will be in a break there. Shower chances still continue. Bristol Bay, southwest Kodiak Island, east side of the island, state airport areas, Kodiak City, probably be dry tomorrow. Low pressure in the Gulf of Alaska really not producing much precipitation. Most of shower activity down to the south of this trough, and showers for the Panhandle diminishing late in the afternoon. Still a chance of snow showers here along the Arctic boundary from the eastern interior, right on down into the Kuskokwim Delta along the Kuskokwim River Valley areas, and then clearing up to the north, and still some flurries possible on the western Arctic coast. And that'll continue into Monday as well. Kind of a weak trough there between the Arctic high north of Mackenzie River Delta and the other one back over the Russian Far East, and still some flurries, isolated snow showers here over the eastern interior. Otherwise, it's mostly cloudy. Chance of showers north Gulf Coast, chance of showers in the Panhandle with that trough, and then this big low pushes northward, and the low center gets north of Atka Island in the afternoon. So gale force winds, rain with that occluded front will push in through Kodiak in the afternoon. And look for a big increase in the winds here over the northern Bering Sea out of the east-northeast with that tightening gradient there. And for lows tonight, anywhere from 15 to 25 below zero up over the northeast interior areas. And the 0 degree isotherm kind of hugging the Alaska Range here all the way into the Kuskokwim Valley. Otherwise, south of the mountains, we're in the teens and lower to mid-20s. Warmer as you head southward to just a shade above freezing for Kodiak. Lows in the lower 40s over the Panhandle, upper 30s to the north. Highs for tomorrow, 40s to lower 50s for the southeast coast, and a little above zero, 0 to 5 above for the central interior from Eagle over to Galena, and staying below zero north of there on out to the eastern Arctic coast, but in the lower 20s on the west side with that weak trough and weak southwest flow. Otherwise, highs around 10 right into the Kuskokwim Delta, near 40 for the Pribilos, mid-40s for the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. Lows the following morning, again down to 15 to 25 below Northeast Interior, 5 to 10 below in the Tanana Valley, south of the Alaska Range, teens to mid-20s by the time you get down to Cook Inlet, and around 40 for the Panhandle, followed by highs 5 to 10 above for the Fairbanks area and upper 20s to mid-30s for southern Alaska.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First line weather graphic, Sunday morning. Some IFR here into the central and spreading into the eastern Aleutians here, Unmak Island specifically, associated with that kind of small but rather strong storm system affecting the area there. Marginal VFR, northern Bering Sea, right on down along the southwest coast, Bristol Bay, Alaska Peninsula. Most of southern Alaska here, some IFR. Looks like the Susitna Valley up to maybe the Denali Park area, improving farther to the north, some marginal VFR North Slope Arctic Coast. IFR socked in tomorrow morning from about Yakutat all the way down to Dixon Entrance. And in the afternoon, that improves to marginal VFR in those areas, some lingering IFR here over toward the eastern border. But marginal VFR with some IFR, or with some VFR, and marginal VFR here, southern Alaska, and the VFR becomes more widespread as you head north. Marginal VFR, western Arctic coast, narrow band down to St. Lawrence Island through the Strait, VFR, then back into the marginal VFR with a small area of IFR here for the Alaska Peninsula and central Aleutians. And for the Monday morning forecast, IFR becomes a little more dominant out here over the southern Bering Sea and the Aleutians. And marginal VFR, northern Bering Sea, again, St. Lawrence Island through the Bering Strait, catching the Seward Peninsula, and then up along the northwest coast, and then just kind of hugging the central Arctic coast there with VFR south of the Brooks Range, right on down the Yukon-Kuskokwim River Valley areas, out to about the Kuskokwim Bay here, then IFR, Bristol Bay, into maybe the Shelikof Strait area, western Kodiak Island, marginal VFR southern Alaska, and also for the Panhandle. And for the afternoon on Monday, IFR takes over here, Kodiak Island, right on up into northeast Bristol Bay, Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound, on up into the southern Susitna Valley, and then it breaks out to VFR from the along the Yukon River here, from the southwest coast, right on up all the way to the, or at least the Porcupine River up there, and then marginal VFR toward the eastern border, marginal for the Panhandle. And for passes, Anatuvik and Adigan, both VFR tomorrow. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, occasionally marginal throughout the day, maybe a little bit of an improving trend, or might be better in the morning, and then some moisture slipping up in the afternoon. Although for Rainy, starting out VFR and that moisture coming up, it'll go VFR in the afternoon there. Windy though, starting out IFR, becoming marginal, a little bit of improvement there. And for Isabel, occasionally marginal. Mentasta, marginal VFR, improving to VFR. Probably by midday. And for Tanita, same trend, starting out marginal, improving conditions to VFR throughout the day. And Portage, VFR the entire day, then looks like some marginal VFR slipping up into Portage here on the eastern entrance tomorrow evening, Sunday evening. And for Chilkoot and White, IFR becoming marginal. Freezing levels at the surface here, right near St. Matthew Island, in across northern Bristol Bay, then up along the coastline here, north of the Panhandle, 4,000 to 6,000 feet there for the southeast coast, 2,000 feet south of Kodiak Island, but north of the central Aleutians. Icing shaping up like this, that storm coming in affecting the central Aleutians, could be some considerable moderate rime icing, but about 5,000 feet with lesser threats as you head eastward here toward the Alaska Peninsula, really scattering out here over the central interior area. The bulk of the icing shifting off into Canada, and maybe a risk of some icing here of the light variety along the western Arctic coast. Probably an over forecast there by throwing it in. And maybe some moderate rime icing there, or mixed icing, mostly in terrain enhanced stuff over toward the eastern border of the southern Panhandle. Jet stream, strongest jet to the south of the area here. High pressure ridging into the Bering Sea, and then a center over the Russian Far East. So got northerly flow here, the cold upper trough affecting much of the interior, and 9,000 feet, a couple of low centers, one here over the southwest interior, another one up over the Yukon. North side, northeast winds 15 to 20 knots, and then some westerlies 25 to 30 across Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, and pretty brisk west winds 25 to 35 into the Panhandle. 55 knot winds here with that storm over the eastern Aleutians, same pattern at 3,000 feet. So taking a look at turbulence, occasional moderate chop here, Unmak Island on out to Atka, and a narrow band of some turbulence, light to isolated moderate over the central interior, moderate chop for the Panhandle.
It used to be that you could only warn one person about a tornado after it had already blown down someone else's barn.
Now, on average, we're able to issue a tornado warning 15 minutes before the tornado's even there, and that wouldn't be happening without Doppler radar.
This NexRad system has reduced fatalities on the order of 45% due to tornadoes since its advent.
We have a lot more information now about storms and being able to understand how they develop, how they produce severe weather, and how that information might be used to improve warnings for our National Weather Service partners.
The lab is unique in that we serve the nation by supporting the National Weather Service in its mission to protect lives and safe property by improving the accuracy and the lead time of severe weather warnings.
We have a legacy of radar research and converting existing technology from military to weather purposes.
A recycled Doppler radar led to the development of NexRad, installed nationwide in the early 90s. It allowed forecasters to see storms like never before.
Not only did we help bring that technology to the National Weather Service and to help protect lives and property, but we have continued to upgrade that technology, keep it relevant, and keep it state-of-the-art.
Recently, a major upgrade was added. Dual polarization technology takes the radar from 2D to 3D. Forecasters now know more about what type of precipitation is falling, which is very helpful during winter storms, as well as how much rain is accumulating, resulting in better flash flood warnings. The radar can also detect and track tornadoes based on debris. Looking to the future, the National Severe Storms Lab is testing the capabilities of phased array radar. Originally used by the U.S. Navy, the antenna scans the skies electronically rather than mechanically, allowing the radar to focus on a storm.
With current technology, we get a full picture or image of what is going on within a storm every 4 to 5 minutes. So it's more like a snapshot. Whereas with phased array radar, we get that picture of what's going on in the storm every minute. So it becomes more like watching a movie. So we can do adaptive, rapid scanning on the storms that matter most, being able to provide the information that's most relevant when and where it's happening.
Another advantage of phased array radar is its multifunction capability, providing weather and air traffic information simultaneously.
Number one, it is a system that promises to replace and expand upon the existing weather surveillance radars. Secondly, to replace aging air traffic surveillance radars. And number three, it offers a potential application to meet Department of Homeland Security and defense requirements for identifying and tracking non-cooperative aircraft. With the replacement of all these various radars with a single system, the American taxpayer could realize substantial savings in cost.
You have a lot fewer radars to maintain, and the electronic capability of this also reduces maintenance costs because you do not have moving parts.
Not too long ago, the ability to predict severe weather was thought to be impossible. During the past several decades, research conducted at the National Severe Storms Lab has developed life-saving tools like Doppler radar. We've progressed from no warning of threatening weather to about a 15-minute lead time, and current research promises to extend that much further.
Our knowledge of severe storms and how they behave And our use and ability to use the Doppler radar technology is in a lot of cases a direct result of that close working relationship, that research to operations component that we get between the National Severe Storms Laboratory and a forecast office.
That history and understanding of how these data can be used by our users and doing the research to help advance the use of radar technology, really it's what we live for, it's in our lifeblood, it's in our history.
It's now easier than ever to be a part of weather research. We just launched the mPing app for both iPhone and Android users, and it's totally free. PING, which stands for Precipitation Identification Near the Ground, is a research project by the NOAA National Severe Storms Lab and the University of Oklahoma. With the mobile app, you can send us your weather observations on the go. Are snowflakes falling on your head? Is hail hitting your car? Just select what type of precipitation is falling and press submit. It's that easy. It takes about 5 seconds and it's anonymous. Reports can then be viewed online. Our scientists will compare your report with what the radar has detected. This helps us develop new radar technologies and techniques. Download the app today, share your reports, and let's work together to make our nation weather ready. Learn more here and follow us.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Look for gale force westerly winds tomorrow here along the central coast of the Panhandle. West 30 knots there blowing into Prince of Wales Island. Seas up to 16 feet and west 25 knots for the north coast. Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay areas, southerlies 30 knots and small craft advisories also for south winds 25 knots there for Stevens Passage. Southeast 25 for Clarence Strait with those seas running anywhere from 5 to 8 feet here over the inside waters. And then the outlook for Monday, south winds at 20 for Stevens Passage and Lynn Canal. Also south 15 for Clarence Strait. So lighter winds most areas and west 20 knots here all along the coastline. Pretty uniform wind pattern. Seas 9 to 11 feet. Prince William Sound, light northwest breeze tomorrow at 10 knots, seas 2 feet. West winds 20 knots for the North Gulf Coast and seas 8 to 9 feet. West 20 for the Barren Islands, west 20 for Kamishak Bay, and west 20 for Southern Cook Inlet. And seas here, Southern Cook Inlet 5 feet and 8 feet for the Barren Islands, 5 feet for Kamishak Bay. Light south winds for Northern Cook Inlet. Those will become light out of the north at 10 knots on Monday here for Northern Cook Inlet. Otherwise northwest 15, south of the Forelands, southwest 10 for Kamishak Bay. Southwest winds 20 knots for the Barren Islands and the eastern North Gulf Coast with 8-foot seas, south 20 knots for the western area there and also seas at 8 feet. Prince William Sound winds stay light but southwest in direction at 10 knots with 2-foot seas. Kodiak Island, west winds 25 knots. Seas in Chillicothe Strait 5 feet, and for the Pacific side of the islands, 9 feet. Sitkinak to Castle Cape, west 25 knots, 9-foot seas, and then Castle Cape to Cape Sarachev here on the Pacific side of the peninsula, southwest 25, 9-foot seas. Southwest 20 with 6-foot seas on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula, west 20 for Bristol Bay, seas at about 4 feet. And for the outlook on Monday, south to southeast winds for the Alaska Peninsula, 30 knots with seas here on the south side up to 21 feet, otherwise 8 feet on the Bering Sea side. East winds coming up to 30 knots for Bristol Bay with seas 5 feet, and then south winds 30 knots here, Castle Cape to Sitkinak, 13-foot seas, only 20 knots in Chillicothe Strait, and 25 knots out of the southwest there for the eastern Kodiak Island marine zones. And for the Fox Islands, tomorrow split it here. Unalaska Island, south to southeast, 25 to 30 knots, seas 7 to 9 feet. And then narrow band of storm force winds in advance of that front there. So that'll be rolling into the Nikolsky area, southeast 50 knots, otherwise Adak and Atka, central Aleutians, east 35 to 45 knots, with strongest winds on the Pacific side of the islands there. Also the highest seas at 21 feet, and then winds diminish significantly and actually swing around to the northwest to 15 from Kiska to Shemya. Outlook for Monday, gales, western Aleutians, north to northwest, 35 to 40 knots, west 40 here. Pacific side of the central Aleutians, lighter to the north, and then south winds, 30 to 40 knots for the eastern Aleutians, with those seas running 12 to 25 feet. Southwest coast, south of Nunivak Island, light northwest winds tomorrow at 15 knots, southeast 15 for the Pribilofs, northeast winds 20 knots, northern Bering Sea, Yukon Delta coast, St. Lawrence Island, and Norton Sound. Northeast 20 for Norton Sound continues into Monday, northeast 30 for St. Lawrence Island. Full gales here along the southwest coast, east-northeast 40 knots, and almost storms, but not quite for the Pribilofs, St. Matthew Island. Northeast winds for those areas at 45 knots, seas 17 to 21 feet. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast, east winds at 15 with ice, no seas because it's ice covered. And south winds 20 knots for the central coast with 3-foot seas, northerlies 20 knots here for the west side, becoming northeast there from Cape Thompson to Wales. And for Monday, north 20 knots for the area from Wales to Cape Thompson, and then 15-knot winds here up the western coastline there. Central coast southeast at 10, east at 10 for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. For tonight again, dry over there for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. Chance of flurries here, central Arctic coast, and maybe grazing the western Arctic coast. Otherwise, look for clearing and less wind. Wind advisory ends for the Kobuk Valley, and winds will diminish also for the Seward Peninsula, St. Lawrence Island area. Chance of light snow here across southern Alaska, and snow advisory ends for the Anchorage area by 1 a.m. for another possible 3 to 6 inches additional, maybe. Stays wet over the Panhandle, showery tomorrow, and then big storm here into the southern Bering Sea on Monday. That's all I've got time for. Thanks for joining us.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.